And if you have a question, press 1. There's quite a few people on the switchboard, but no hands are up, and I'm going to welcome Michael.
Well, thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Delighted that you're here. We get to go with this conversation once again and hopefully uncover for all of us more and more of the nuances of what the full implications are of understanding life through the brain cells of the first century Aramaic language. You know, it's interesting, excuse me. Excuse me, I just inhaled a little bit of water I was drinking. It's interesting when you look at the Aramaic language and then you think about, you know, many people have had interactions with people in other cultures, and some will say, well, how do you say that in French, Italian, whatever it is? And the person responded, you can't say that. We don't have that. And, you know, when you really look at that, what you realize is that each culture has its own set of brain cells through which it sees life. We're all structured with those in whatever culture we are brought up in. And, you know, they talk about culture shock. What is culture shock? Culture shock is being in a culture where people have such a totally different set of brain cells to respond to. It's like, wait a minute, my reality doesn't even resemble yours. And, you know, the foundation of this work is recognizing that reality is the output of the mind. We never see with our eyes what's going on in the external world. That's a trick of the mind. If you want to do a deep dive into that one, go do a search on YouTube for a TED Talk by a neuroscientist named Anil, A-N-I-L, Seth, S-E-T-H. And Anil has a powerful presentation from the laboratory on how the brain is what generates the world we see. The eye doesn't see a world. The eye just receives information. You can't see out through the eye. And so when information comes in through the eye, it's a light receiver, information comes in, that causes certain brain cells to fire. If you have a different set of brain cells firing in response to the same energetic information as I do, then your brain generates for you a different reality than mine. And mine generates a different reality from yours. So we see this in cultures where people are like, well, you just can't say that. There's no concept for that in our language. Why? Because that's not in experience. We don't have the brain cells for it. You listen to Yeshua, and he says, you got to have, in order to make use of his work, in order to really play with him, you've got to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. Going to a culture that is totally different from ours and refusing to have anything to do with the brain cells through which that other culture interprets the world makes us or leaves us looking pretty stupid. And sadly, when the Greek, looking for a word, the Greek control game took over the Aramaic scriptures and interpreted them. They interpreted them through a lens that is so different from Aramaic. You can't even call what they did a translation. It's not a translation. It's an interpretation. A reality so different that it's hard to imagine that one could even fathom the other. And so for me, the fact that this genius Yeshua knew exactly how that process worked in each person's mind, and if a person's mind was using some form of corrupt data, that means there was some form of hostility or fear moving in a person, he knew exactly how to resolve that unconscious hostility and fear. He knew what drove perception. He said, here's how you get to clean out your mind of perceptual constructs, of cultural constructs that are so bastardized that they hardly represent what's going on in the actual world. The process he taught was a process of forgiveness. Now you'll notice the Greeks turned that one totally backward. And they have a whole story that goes with it. You know, you just listen. If you've been listening to media the last day or two, you hear this story being played out in true living color and Dolby sound. This is unfair. It's all your fault. I'm only experiencing this because of what you did. And that's the Greek mindset. Now, of course, then the Greeks will come along and say, well, you know, if they're causing your pain, i.e., if your perceptual construct contains pain, if you have a Greek mindset, you live in total denial of ownership for your pain, and so you have a whole story about why it's somebody else's fault. And then the Greeks, and this again is not translation, this is interpretation so far removed from the truth of the Aramaic, then the Greek interpretation says once you realize that you're in pain, then you know that it's somebody else's fault. You know, right from the word go, you are a member of the one world religion, universal religion of blame, and you've got somebody to blame. And the Greeks will tell you that you're just supposed to let them off the hook for the pain that's moving in you. And of course, if I let you off the hook for the pain that's moving in me, have I done anything to address the root of the pain that's moving in me? Nothing whatsoever. And Yeshua knew that those constructs of the mind, and this is universal for everyone. I don't care what culture you're from. I don't care, you know, if you're in one of the most basic cultures of the world, they call primitive, but actually sometimes have a whole lot more wisdom than the so-called advanced cultures, or if you're an advanced culture. It doesn't matter. The way your mind generates the world you see, the realities, the perceptual constructs, is based upon the goals that you hold. So perception is a servant of goals. When I have a goal, my mind, being an evidential device, let's go back to some of that Harvard research we've talked about, proved that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, the maximum amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits. If I select a different 9 bits of data than you do, then I have a whole different reality than you do. If my purpose, because perception, is a servant of purpose, if my purpose is different than yours, then I'll be in exactly the same circumstances and even have all of the same brain cells as you, but I'll have a totally different reality. Because my goals are always a servant of my purpose. And the goal that I set for my mind to achieve causes my mind to serve only evidence or information that would empower me to achieve that goal. So in the same circumstance, you know, if you've ever been in a courtroom and you listen to 6 different people testify about an accident, in some cases you'd hardly know they were at the same accident. Their perceptions, their constructs are so different. There is a measuring stick for whether or not your mind is using corrupt data to build your reality. You know, when they said to Yeshua, what's most important in the law? He didn't say love God, love your neighbor as yourself. He said, have Rahman you think of the Creator, neighbor, and by so doing, you maintain your human life. You maintain awareness of yourself as who you are, as love. So if Rahman is open, and there's no such concept as Rahman in the Greek language, in the Latin language, or the English language, until we started to build the brain cells for what it meant, it's a filter in the frontal lobes of the brain that allows only brain cells keyed to love to be used in formulating your goals. When somebody first hears that, it's like, yeah, well, you know, so what? I promise you, it is the most monumental piece of information you will ever come across if you want to know how to change your mind and therefore change your physiology. It is the most monumental piece of information you will ever come across. So in the Aramaic language, Yeshua never instructed anyone to forgive anyone. He instructed to shebang or to cancel the goals that were driving your pain perception so you could go inside yourself and remove the corrupt data that was building your pain perception. When you understand that about the human mind, and you're willing to say, I am going to handle all of the corrupt data within my structure and free myself from it, then you go to work. And what happens, and it took me about 35 years to understand this, working full-time with the Aramaic, that's how obscure this idea is, that what happens when you cancel a goal, that perceptual construct which occupies the 9-bit mind collapses in on itself. And when it collapses in on itself, it collapses in on its own footprint, which then gives you access to the underlying dynamic. When you can clear the space on a conscious level by canceling a goal, that what we metaphorically call the 9-bit mind, the space of conscious awareness, is emptied of its content. Now there's a space for the unconscious dynamics within yourself to come forward for healing. So it's just such a, it sounds so simple, and I say it now in 5 minutes or less. It took me working full-time. When I'm talking about full-time, I'm talking about, there are a lot of 16 or 18-hour days, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 days a week. To understand that your perceptual constructs, when you are pained, well, anytime, but especially when you're pained, is a reflection of something moving within you, and to know how to access that which is moving within you and forgive it, remove it, monumental. And most of the world has not a clue what's driving their minds, and they're sure that absolutely everybody else is at fault for what's happening in their lives. The expression of the one world universal religion of blame looks like, you made me mad, you made me sad, you really hurt me. Well, if I take a breath and stop and think about it, every time I've been mad in my life, 87 different times with 42 different people, I'm the only one that was there every time. Every time I've been sad in my life, again, 87 different times with 42 different people, I'm the only one that was there every time. Maybe those constructs of my mind are about me and are a reflection of me rather than the person that I'm wanting to blame. When you discover that truth, then you have the keys to clean up the underlying content of the mind and step back into living as a human being with an evidential device that tracks, the mind being an evidential device. You know, when you're looking at 9 bits of data out of 10,000 brain cells firing, you're looking at nothing but evidence. And everybody gets to see only the evidence of their own BS. And of course, that's belief system. Maybe somebody has a different reality for those initials. And there's my point. If you have a reality for BS that's different than belief system, you might even be insulted at what I just said. But notice, if you were insulted by the meaning you hold for those initials, you'd be insulted by the content of your own mind, not by my use of the initials, which are belief system. So understanding how to collapse corrupted perceptual constructs, understanding how to access the underlying dynamics of your own mind and your own life, rather than hiding them by projecting them into your brain's image of others, changes the whole game of life. And the reason we're here is to provide the tools that will assist each and every person on planet Earth in being able to make that shift and that change and moving back to the truth of who we each are. And if you hold a newborn child, it's pretty clear the newborn child is the presence of love. It's pretty clear to me that you are the presence of love. Now, if you can't tell that I'm the presence of love, then something's jamming your perceptual mechanism or something's jamming mine. And whoever's jammed has work to do. Pain is nothing but a signal that our thought processes are off base. And we're being shown what it is that we need to look at, what it is that we need to deal with. Now you say, of course, well, no, the pain isn't because your thought process, it's because you bumped into something and hurt yourself. Why was your awareness not there that you stepped around what it was you bumped into? I'd offer that this human energy system is a device that is continuously giving us energy about everything that is around us. And the only place we have difficulty receiving that energy is the places where we're in blockage of truth. The blockage of truth is a life where I tell myself a lie, you made me mad, and I call that lie the truth. Now I fill this 9-bit space of conscious awareness, and I am totally convinced that you're the problem in my life. Of course, if I go one more step and say, yeah, and I'm the one who's feeling it, then you realize perhaps it's time for some forgiveness. Now, people can throw that away and say, well, that's silly, that's foolish. Okay. You want your life to change? I'll tell you what, you keep living out of the perceptual, how'd that old saying go? Keep doing what you've always got, you keep getting what you always got. Change the dynamics inside of your own mind, and life supports you with something other than the old qualities of support that perhaps were just reflections of your own self-destructive nature. So it's pretty profound when you step into using those tools. And we're here to support you in doing that. And Ms. Jeannie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up? Anything happening in the chat room or any questions?
We actually have a question in the chat room. And
great.
It's referring to A Course in Miracles. And I found the section where it's talking about it's Workbook Lesson 158.
Right.
It says, the time is set already. It appears to be quite arbitrary, and yet there is no step along the road that anyone takes by chance. It has already been taken by him, although he has not yet embarked on it. For time but seems to go in one direction, but we undertake a journey that is over, and yet it seems to have a future still unknown to us. Time is a trick, a sleight of hand, a vast illusion in which figures come and go as if by magic. And yet there is a plan behind the appearances that does not change. The script is written. When experience will come to end, your doubting has been set. But we but see the journey from the point at which it ended, looking back on it, imagining we make it once again, reviewing mentally what has gone by. They want to know, what does it mean the script is written, or what's your take on that?
My take would be, well, let's put in a couple of foundation pieces. One, in order to make sense of that passage, you have to recognize that time is something that we made up. It appears to be very real, and it's one of those useful fantasies that we have. It's like, most people say, well, the sun rose at 7:02 this morning. No, look, for I don't even know how long. Long time. We've known the sun never rose and the sun never set. But it's a fantasy. I mean, just about every television station in the country, on their weather report, they're going to say, yep, and the sun rises at 7:02. It's just not true. The Earth turns and exposes the sun. There's no sunrise. But it's a fantasy that everybody plays in, and some people know it's a fantasy, I assume, and some people don't. Well, time is in the same category, and let's use an example to lay that out. So let's imagine that you and I are interacting, and we have a ball, and you and I throw the ball back and forth, and you catch the ball, and I catch the ball, and we know that the ball is a singular event. And let's imagine, we're three-dimensional creatures, so it's very clear to us this ball is a singular event. But let's imagine that we bring somebody who's only got 2 dimensions of perception into contact with the ball, and we want to teach them to play ball. So the person who experiences, who's a two-dimensional, only has length and width, experiences the ball, and they experience the first, edge of the ball as a small flat circle. They experience the second piece of the ball as a little larger flat circle, a little larger, going to the full circumference of the ball, and then the circles start to contract, and so it looks like to someone with debilitated perception that only has two dimensions, of perception instead of three. It looks like the ball is a series of flat planes separated by time. Now, you and I look at the ball, and it's clear it's just a single event. But someone who is short one dimension in perception, it's not a single event, it's a series of events. And so they're living in a fantasy, something that their perceptual minds have made up. So now that passage, I would say, many people could move into a fatalistic state of saying, well, I have no control, the script's already written, I guess, my life is done, I'll just, do whatever I do. That would be as big a misinterpretation of those words for me as telling me that the ball is a series of flat planes separated by time. I experience the ball. It's a single event. There is no time involving it. There are no flat planes, small, getting bigger, smaller. It just doesn't exist, though it is perceived. And this is a key, I think, to really get is lots of things happen in perception that never happened in actuality. Just realities output from the mind. So I can easily see where someone might hear that passage and go, fatalistic, oh, well, there's nothing I can do. I have no choice. I guess things are just going to unfold. It's already determined. No, well, they're not the brain cells through which I view that passage. What I view that passage is that we have become stuck in generational patterns, kind of like the series of flat planes. We've got a series of pictures in our minds that we think are true about life and true about us. And a lot of those times those pictures include very debilitating messages about ourselves and about others. And so my input would be, compared to truth, that's a lie. Just like compared to the truth of the ball being a single experience, no time involved, just a single experience, it's a lie to say it's a series, or let's be more general with that. It's a mistake to say that it's a series of flat planes separated over time, even though we have a person in our midst who's experienced it that way. So what I hear when I hear that passage is, you are a being, and I'm going to a conclusion that comes from the last half century of work that I've done for me, on myself, that to me translates to nothing you believe in the illusion, nothing you believe in the error, nothing you believe about flat planes separated by time exists or has any impact whatsoever. The only thing that's true about you is you are created of the active presence of love. And if you bought into some flat planes that say, I'm not worthy, I'm going to get beaten, I'm going to get taken advantage of, whatever those flat planes are, whatever those realities are, you get to experience those as the output of your mind. They're not facts. So what I hear in that passage is, there is a fact. You are made of the stuff called love, and as a creator, when you get conscious of that, you will create your life in accord with who you really are. If you're doing something different, then there are all kinds of roads to go down that are just, can be nasty and destructive and painful and all of that. But the end result is written. You are who you are as the presence of love, no matter what your power person told you, no matter what your former spouse told you, no matter what, your sergeant when you went into the Army told you. There's one thing true about you. It's been true from the beginning. It will be true until the end, if there is such a thing. And that is, you're made of the stuff called love. You're a creator, and you are at perfect liberty to create your life. The only thing that will inhibit that is all the beliefs you have about flat planes. And the objective of forgiveness is to remove those flat planes Those things that inform you incorrectly about what's going on, come back to the truth. And the truth is written. The truth is done. It's finished. It's never going to change. You are a being created at the active presence of love, made in the image and likeness of a creator, and that makes you a creator. Capture that truth about yourself and you forgive everything else, then the truth that's written is you'll go about creating your life as you choose to create your life as a creator, rather than, the flat-plain descriptions that, we've acquired, we're victims and somebody's doing it to us, and, the power person messages of you're broken, there's something wrong with you, you'll never be good enough. Those are all topics to simply be forgiven, to be removed from the perceptual system so that we can see what's already true, even though it may not appear to be true. I hope that makes sense. That's a powerful passage. And whoever wrote that in the chat room, if there are more refinements or if there's any conversation to be had about it, please feel welcome to call the radio number. Our calling number is 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you'll be listening to the show directly. And then push 1, that will raise a hand in the control panel, and we'll be having a conversation directly. So if that question doesn't completely, or pardon me, that answer doesn't completely fulfill your question, then please push 1. Let's say hello. So, Miss Jeannie, what do we have?
No further comment in the chat room, and there are no hands up. We've got a lot of people on the switchboard, though, so if someone has a question or a comment, press 1.
By the way, Jeannie, if our young man, we have a young man here working on our gardens, if he happens to come to the door because he's completed the projects we've given him, maybe if you would show him where the clippers are and get him to clip the plastic ties on our cover on the garden so we can open that up and put the top on it. If he runs out of things to do. Cool. So if you're out there in Listerland, how can we support you? What's on your mind? 563-999-3581. We've got a half an hour. Lots of time for conversation. So many days people wait till the last minute to put their hand up. Or they complain about, oh, somebody's taking all the time. So come on, push 1. Let's have a conversation. So maybe we just spend the next half hour breathing together? Okay, let's say hello.
All right, it's Craig, 810. You're on the air.
Hey, guys, how are you?
Hey, I'm rocking. How about you, sir?
Good. I just started tuned in. I was a little bit late today, but I just wanted to share with you. So I had experience just a couple days ago. A friend was over, and they came back, and they were in my pantry, and there was I'd eaten the tuna fish that was in the pantry. And they texted me at work and said, hey, where's the tuna? And it was funny. It was like, it's my house, it's my food, I bought it, sorry I ate it, so it was kind of a chuckle. But Michael, what it did, it stirred up inside me. My mother, when I was a child, hid food in the house. And so as kids, we had to ask permission to just go to the cupboard and get a cracker. It was insane. And in the summertime, when I was home a little bit, my sisters would call my mom at work, and they'd come walking through the house with a Twinkie. And I'm like, hey, where'd you get those? Well, we called mom at work. You have to call mom at work, you get one. So her asking about the tuna somehow, I don't know.
Triggered that whole thing, eh?
It didn't trigger. What it just did was I kind of laughed, and then I thought, I think it was a couple days ago you were just talking about, thank you for presenting an opportunity to me to get rid of that. And that's
Right.
what it did. Yeah. So I worked through that a little bit. I just thought it was like, my God, somebody just joking around about tuna. Like it elicits stuff, but it was like, normally that would have brought me pain, and it brought me solace. It was kind of a strange, it was a little bit of a stretch because it was like food. Is it my food? Am I protecting it? Like, I remember going, I don't know if I told you, but I usually got shipped away to my aunt's house in the summer, which I loved. But I remember the first time down there, she was a nurse. I was by myself, probably like 10, 12. And I would call her at work. Hey, Aunt Faye, can I have this? Yeah, honey, go ahead and eat it. After about 2 days, she came home, and she says, sweetheart, sit down. I'm like, what's up? She goes, do you see all these covers? Yeah, do you see these covers? I'm like, yeah. Do you see that refrigerator? I'm like, yeah. She goes, stop calling me at work. Just eat. And she tells the story later in life about the biggest mistake she ever made because I was a teenager. I just ran her out of the house and groceries. So, but it was just kind of neat. It was kind of the first time I think I recognized something gave me certain feelings, and I just like dealt with it immediately. It was kind of weird. Not weird. It was joy-filled. You know?
That's awesome.
I
hear you. I hear you loud and clear.
I have since replaced the tuna, so I won't touch that.
Well, it sounds like, it sounds like a powerful turnaround of living in the flat plane separated by time to stepping into being, stepping into wholeness. And, that's the whole objective of this work, is every reality within the mind that takes us back into this illusion of some kind of hostility or fear, to remove all of that so that true wholeness shows up. And wholeness always carries joy with it, no matter what's happening in the world.
I tuned in late, and I just got the tail end of that conversation, so I'll replay that when we're done here. So I want to listen to the comments on that. But it was just like, can you tell me if these tools work or not? Yeah. I just did so. I wouldn't have been like this months ago. I would have just been like,
right,
still carrying it around in me, So it was kind of like, very cool. So very much appreciative.
Well, and to tag that, for anyone who's maybe new to the show or listening and hasn't engaged the tools, I mean, literally, in the actuality, a la that question that was asked about the story is already written. The story of our wholeness is already written, and everything else that would drag us down into some form of hostility or fear, everything is a lie of the mind.
Yeah.
And because we're creators, if we hold a lie in the mind, we can go out and produce the evidence to prove that our lie is true over and over and over again. Doesn't make it true, but in our reality structure, we can pretend it's so. And so the objective here is to recognize that any story based in hostility or fear, anything that resonates, and, if I hold something, then I'm literally sending out a set of instructions to somebody to come and show it to me. I don't know if you've been on a show where I've talked about Marcel Vogel, who was a 23-year senior scientist from IBM. I used to speak at a conference called Global Sciences. And one year Marcel Vogel came and he brought a camera called a Delaware camera. And the Delaware camera is a camera that literally you have a tuning mechanism in front of the aperture, just like a radio tuner. So when you click the aperture and the aperture opens, it captures whatever the tuning mechanism is attuned to, if it's there. I.e., example, if you've got an acorn in front of the camera and the camera is tuned properly, when you take a picture of the acorn, what shows up on the photographic plate is an oak tree. Which most people would say, well, that's ridiculous. How could that happen? Well, obviously, if you know how to decode it, inside of every acorn there's an oak tree. There's the structure. There's the instructions for, nobody's ever planted an oak seed or an acorn and gotten a Volkswagen or a tomato or a rose. Every time you plant an acorn, you get an oak tree, because in the acorn is the seed, is the vibratory pattern of. And in us is the vibratory pattern of everything from our generations. And congratulations on, taking advantage of just stepping into a sweet space, recognizing one of those old energies and moving through it. I mean, that's what we're here for. You just, thank you.
I mean, it was, I'm going to use this horrible word here, but if it had been 3 months ago, my reaction would have been totally weird. It's like, hey, you had a friend who made a joke about a can of tuna, and it put you into a funk. How normal is that, or how? And this is like,
well, unfortunately, unfortunately, Craig, that runs the world, literally the whole world right now, and that's called a power person dynamic. What is that funk about? That funk is about the leftover energy that you briefly described to us of the times when mom was not there to support you, would not support you with what you wanted, but she took care of your sisters. There's the funk, and that joke resonated that funk, and you fortunately had the tools instead of dropping into that funk. And, some people drop into that stuff, and they're lost there for days, weeks, months. Sometimes a whole lifetime when those big things comes up.
I would have been. I mean, if this was 90 days ago, I would have been. I can tell you right now, that's a huge thing. There's a lot of dynamics to that power.
So that's a power person dynamic.
Yeah, right. So, and I definitely have that. So, I just thought it was kind of a. I have a buddy that I'm trying to get hooked up with Dr. Tim. He lives 10 miles away from him. And he's, like the rest of us, he has issues or whatnot. And I try to explain everything I've learned in the last 100 days to my buddy. And some of it just sits there and goes, I sprung on him, Dave, you never loved anybody. He was like, I had 3 kids and a wife. I'm like, I know, this might require a beer. I'm not sure, but it's a lot. It's a lot to figure out.
Well, and what you presented him with, which I was talking about earlier, is culture shock.
Yeah.
When we live in a culture of non-being, we are very dedicated members of the one world universal religion of blame, and everything's everybody else's fault. When I move out of that culture in my own mind, and I live in a world as a responsible creator, then when something comes along that is less than love that's in me, a power person dynamic such as this, I'm able to breathe, I'm able to embrace it and work through it rather than get lost in it. And as I say, many people get lost in those things their whole lives.
Yeah, I know.
So nice work. That's awesome.
Going to work the other day, and I had some people cut me off in traffic. It's one of these where the freeway's going down to 2 lanes. I've got this group of people in the left lane, like, I'm more important than you are, I need to get it before you kind of thing. And that just kept happening, and I was getting frustrated. I was talking to my friend, and she says, hey, Craig. I'm like, what? She goes, why aren't you just blessed that you're able to drive to work this morning? And I was like,
bingo.
Okay, you're one of those guys. Okay, I get it. But it's kind of how I felt over this situation. It's like, I have a beautiful friend. He's at my house. He's joking around with me. And what are you going to do? You're going to turn it into some kind of dark childhood issue, and it just evaporated.
Yeah.
So beautiful. I appreciate it.
Sadly.
So
sadly, that's the dynamic behind every enemy in the world that anybody has. It's exactly that.
Yeah.
So thanks for opening the field a little wider to eradicate the whole idea of enemies on the planet and to get us back to the point where we recognize that we're one.
I think yesterday I had 3 marbles instead of my normal 2, so it was pretty good.
That's awesome. Delighted.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, I'll let you go.
Glad to be on the team. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing
Bye,
that. That's powerful. That gives the gift to everybody.
Appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Blessings. Extending love in your direction.
Thank you, Michael.
You're most
We
welcome.
have another hand.
And as Dr. Tim would say, deserving. Go for it, Jeannie.
I believe it's Sunny, 765. You're on the air.
Hello. How
Welcome,
are you?
young lady. How are you? I'm rocking.
Doing good.
Doing well.
Doing good. It's not even a direct, I know you're going to hear me say it in the regulatory speech or something. You're going to hear what I'm saying. I believe I've made an observation, and I'm not surprised at the content that is currently going on in your greater works in the moment with the cranial pelvic work, that connection, and the avocent. The observation, I maybe this serves you somehow. In all these years of work that we've been doing with your work, how is it that a vast majority of us who have done it for so long are here with the cranial pelvic issues? We've done all this other work and cleared out a lot of stuff over the years. And now it just occurs to me what I'm hearing is that now we land us, veterans, I guess, of your work, and making that connection with this. I was listening to the show yesterday on my way to the NUCA's office, and which is upper cervical neck specialist, for that very treatment, and it's ongoing. And we believe we've tracked it down to the seat. So that's where I'm able to function from. I've placed calls to Avocet, and I've not got a return call yet to communicate with them verbally and see what that would look like.
What was that? I didn't hear that last statement. Say it again. Yet it'll clip in your voice.
I've called the toll-free number for Avocet, and no one has returned my calls as of yet.
Oh.
So I can communicate.
Well, if you want to talk about the
that.
Avocen, if you want to talk about the Avocen, I'm the one to speak to. They don't sell directly, so we're a representative for Avocen. So if that's something you're interested in, we can talk about that.
All right. Well, we'll do that very soon because there are several people in my group that are very interested, and some have, bedridden wheelchairs, that type of thing, that would be very interested in knowing more about it and that kind of thing. So I just wondered if that observation is that we've done all this work, and now here we are, and it's like I can't find it, and maybe it is in fact generational. Not really sure what's stuck in there. I did have dry needling done yesterday, which seemed to have a profound effect on my jaw, but I didn't get any real message as to what that might be connected to. And I've been working with your most latest mind shifter, and that I felt in the neck or the shoulders area. Let me see if I can lay my hands right on that. I have pages, and worked with that for several days, and I appreciate you in that very, very much, because it was more like I sent you a photo of the works that I'd started doing with that mind shifter. I don't know if maybe it's time for yet another to build beyond that point. I'm not sure. But I just made that observation, and I wanted to offer you that if, in fact, that had been your observation as well, that we get through a lot of our stuff over the years, and then we're landing here with this cranial pelvic connection. If that's like we've gone so far back, and there we are.
That's a deep conversation, which I'll be delighted to get into. But before I get into it, if you would, pick a number from 1 to 24.
17.
And tell me what that number is. 17?
Yes.
Okay, and then a number from 1 to 13.
I'm stuck between 4 and 5 in my head.
Oh, pick one. Which one came first?
Let's go with probably the 4, but I'm leaning hard into 5. But give me 4 if you would, please.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't you work on both of them?
Okay.
So 4 is, got a pen handy? This is a mantra to work on.
Do. Been doing this with my group with the
Functioning.
little sheet that I have. Yeah, go ahead.
Cool.
Ready.
Functioning out of my true mind, and that would be capital T, capital M on mind, always results in me taking the highest and best action. Functioning out of my true mind always results in me taking the highest and best action.
The best and less
The
viewers.
highest and best action. The highest and best
and
action.
Okay, very good.
Functioning out of my true mind always results in me taking the highest and best action. That's 4.
Okay.
And then 5, you get a bonus. I always listen to the guidance. 5 is I always listen to the guidance that strengthens behaviors based in love, generosity, and right action.
That strengthens from there.
Behaviors based in love, comma, generosity, and right action.
Okay.
Okay, so the next thing I'll address, we were asking about the Avison. I can, if you're interested in acquiring one, I can talk to you after the show. The newsletter that I sent out had a special that actually, this being the 31st of May, expires at midnight California time tonight, and it's like by about $400 or $500 cheaper than anything I've seen. That's somebody can get their hand into an Avison for $2,024 with a 1-year warranty. And so if you're seriously thinking about that, it would probably make sense because that price is probably going to go up by at least $500 by tomorrow. So just if you're interested in doing something there. And then as far as why am I not finished with this? Well, let me just say that I personally have been doing this work, my own personal process, for the last 50 years. And when I say 50 years, I'm talking about full-time, on it, 10, 14, 16, 18 hours a day, 9 days a week. And I still sometimes ask myself that question, why am I not finished with this one? And my offering is that when you start to realize, if you listen to the scriptures, well, let's back up a little bit further than that. Let's listen to Einstein first. On such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy. Energy whose vibrations have been so low as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. Just to take that as a piece of information and recognize that your body-mind unit does not exist as a mind or as a body. It exists as an energy field. Now, what's the complexity of that energy field? Well, again, go back in the scriptures and you hear them talking about the sins. And remember, the word sin simply is an archery term that means off the mark. The energetic patterns that create diseases in one generation are passed, yea, unto 3 and 4 generations. And if you fulfill that quote, it ends up with, of those who hate me. So here's the Creator talking to you and I saying, you're going to be stuck. Your only advisor for your behavior, pardon me, is going to be whatever in your genes if you can't connect with me. So the Creator, love, is saying you're designed to be in direct relationship with my presence, with the active presence of love. And in Aramaic, that word that says, yea, of those who hate me, hate isn't as a love-hate relationship. It's those who are separated from the conscious active presence of love are stuck with what's ever gone on in their genes through generational patterns. And there isn't room for the mind of being to show up as long as we're in that separated place. Now, if you listen, they talked about in the scriptures the energetic patterns, quote-unquote sins, of the fathers will be passed, yea, unto 3 and 4 generations. Now, if you add up the number of lives in 4 generations, including your own, mom and dad's moms and dads, their moms and dads, theirs and theirs, in your genes, in my genes, are literally the energetic patterns of at least 31 lives, our own plus the 30 who went before us. Now, when you look at, where we are today, those who study War and Peace say that this is with all of its crazy shams and craziness, it is the most peaceful the earth has been in its history. The people who study that are saying. Even though people who have upset in their minds can find 100,000 other people to blame their upset on, we're still in a more peaceful world than we've ever been. And if you look at, just think about, I think about my parents. I think about my dad and my mom were brought up in a pretty tough town in Glasgow, Scotland. I don't know a lot about their parents are their parents, but when I look at and I study the history of Scotland, where my family system is from, and I look at things like the King of England had the right of prima nocte. Do you know what that is?
I do not.
Okay, so the king declared that, and this was a way to get all of the traders in Scotland to go for the king's, to support the King of England taking over, is he declared that the lord of the manor, the one that was supporting him, and they had, maybe 10 or 20 or 50 or 1,000 families beneath them. If a young girl was getting married to a young man in his community, he had the right of the first night to sleep with her. The lord of the manor, according to the king. Now, let's just take that one thing in my genes, and what kind of insanity do you suppose has been unresolved in my bloodline from that single fact, let alone the wars, the slaughters, the starvation, the injustice, the sheriff of Nottingham, who was probably is a symbol of the most unjust person that's ever existed. What do you suppose the impact is in 4 generations of that in your bloodline and my bloodline? And then recognize that the 4th generation back got their mind energy patterns from the previous 4 generations. Who got them from the previous 4? Who got them from the previous 4? Who got them from? Who got them from? Who? Go back 31 generations, and in your bloodline and mine, there are over 1.6 billion people. There is the mind energy, 1.6 billion people stored in your structure. And that mind energy reflects is what you call, or what we call, physiology, a physical body. But it is not a physical body. It looks like one because our brain constructs it as one, but it's an energy system organized by mind energy. At what point have I gone with enough willingness, and at what point do I have the tools, and at what point do I use the tools at the depth where I'm able to clean up even one of those issues? Take the one that Craig was just sharing with us about, being a kid and mom and, having food controlled and taken away. What do you suppose that shows up as in physiology? I would offer that, we can't ever separate the body from the mind. They are one in the same. If I hold up a coin, once I've got a coin and it has the head of George Washington on it, it's a silver dollar, and somebody looks at the coin and they say, oh, I see George Washington. And then I turn the coin over and they say, oh, I see an eagle. Now, George Washington, eagle. It seems like they're 2 separate things there. But are they 2 separate things, or are they one? There's a singular event called a coin. I look at different perspectives of it, and I see different images, so I think there's something separate, but in fact the coin is one. There is no point at which I can take the head, I can take George Washington, the head off of the coin, and leave only a tail, right?
Right.
So in the same way, my offering is, if I were to hold up a body-mind unit, we could look at one side and we'd say, ah, mind. And we could look at the other side and we'd say, ah, body. They're separate. And in fact, there's an historical event that happened in history where the church came in and said, we want the mind and the soul and you can have the body. And they created a separation. But there's no separation. You can't take the mind out of the body. You can't take the body out of the mind. So every dis-ease, every sin, every energy that's off the mark of your generations in mind reflects as a physiological expression that looks like physical. Except it's not physical. It's never been physical. It never will be physical. It is an organized state of energy, and it reflects something. We can, and what tends to happen is, over time, as those heavier patterns get driven into physiology, especially if there's been physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, those things get driven into physiology. It's as though the energy becomes encrusted in the field. And what my experience has been is that a necessary part of processing through what the mind needs to process through is that the physiology needs to shift as well. When they said be holy, they weren't saying go out and get down on your knees and fold your hands. They were saying do your work on all levels, physiologically, mentally, emotionally, pay attention to your nutrition, do all of those things. And so what I've experienced is, in my own life, is I've gotten a certain amount of work done. I've done a certain amount of processing in terms of my own issues and such. And then I've found a tool or come into somebody who's got an expertise in a tool, and all of a sudden I work with that tool, and bingo, like I just moved light years in minutes. How did I move so many light years in minutes? Well, it was actually work that I had already done. And because I touched into on the level where we think of physiology, I touched into the physiological aspect of it, I was able to open and complete the work that had been done in the higher energy realms, but had not yet come down to the physical.
Yeah, I get that.
So that's my take. And the reason to work on all levels is to keep the mental, emotional work that needs to be done, to keep that in tune and working through it in physiology.
Right.
So that would be my take.
Well, I appreciate all of this very, very much. You did say something, and it brought about another hopefully quick question. I'm not looking at your clock
Go
here.
for it.
You said those who hate me, and it brought about so I don't personally like it when I feel I'm at odds with someone, like if they go away mad. It's like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah. Remember that I put in that equation when I said hate. In Aramaic, that word hate doesn't mean hate as we speak about it in this culture. It speaks of, here's the Creator speaking to us saying, if you are separated from the active presence of love in you, so it's separated from, not hate in a love-hate relationship. So if I'm in a situation like Craig just shared with us in his call, he's rolling along, he's having a great day, he's connected with love, and all of a sudden somebody resonates some stuff from his childhood about food and how he's taken care of. And what happens? That energy comes up. That would be what we would define as separation from love. And it's the forgiveness process that allows us to open that. And the physiological processes that are engaged in taking the energy system through, and for want of a better term, I would say through the encrusted states of physiology that are a result of things that maybe we've already worked through, but we haven't engaged the physiological process to complete the expression in physiology. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. While I was preoccupied with my original question, as much as I'll re-listen to that particular portion of it, but I get that. Perhaps as mundane, but when you said that, those who hate me, it brought about the teenagers who actually, were not happy with being delegated into, becoming my babysitter when I was fostered. And so they didn't like me my whole life and still don't. So I'm thinking, wow, I don't recall doing worksheets on those people. So I have, I love them, I am love for them, care for them, but there are people out there in the world that carry, they're not in love with me, we can take them or leave them as we're doing our work. It's like, okay, I did my work. But if we know that there's someone out there that you are not their favorite person, it might be important to clear that energy out of our field and do worksheets on them. And that was just a profound observation for me, Michael. So I thank you in that, bringing that question up.
Nice. There are two interesting tests in the Course in Miracles that assist one in assessing where they are in their process. The first test is an easy one. It says, when you think of anyone, are you at perfect peace? If I've done my work around the people in my life, then I can be at perfect peace with them. But then the tough part of the test is, when they think of you, do they share your perfect peace?
Yeah.
And if not, it's because there's an energy link yet that's being held and needs to be cleaned up.
Exactly. That was very profound. Thank you.
You're welcome. And
I am one of those
radio show
people
screaming in my ear that we're complete.
Oh, yes, we are. Thank you, Michael.
And so, we're a little over time, but we can certainly continue the conversation tomorrow if you want to do that. Let's go for it. In the meantime, everybody,
Monday.
The best year yet of your eternal life. Awesome. Oh, Monday. That's right. Today's Friday. Awesome gift to you.